So, another Northern Monkeys video here. This time we're talking about the Tyranids and the impact of the June sort of general balance update on them. A lot of good stuff for the bugs. Quick disclaimer, I'm not like super knowledgeable about Tyranids, but I've played a few games of them now, both pre and post the dataslate and the changes. So I'm pretty happy to talk about them, and I think they're a cool army. So iconic. So yeah, before the data slate, Tyranids were, while they had like, a cool model range and a good refresh this edition, the rest of it, I think the general consensus is just wasn't kind on them. They kind of had very light damage. They were struggling to deal with vehicles in any meaningful way without getting a very high strength anywhere. And generally all their units just felt a bit underwhelming. Especially remember some games against my friend where he charged 10 Gene Stealers. These iconic monsters that are supposed to tear apart Terminators. He'd charge them into some Orc Commandos and kill like 2, and then all the Gene Stealers would die back. It was just a bit sad, to be honest. So there was that problem. There was also the weird kind of anti-synergies they'd have with like units not being able to lead other units that should have synapse not having synapse, and all sorts of weird stuff like that just kind of sucked. And as well as that, the Shadow in the Warp ability seemed to like sometimes just not do anything. And when your opponent was getting something like Oath of Moment, which, consistently did something all game, it was pretty harsh. So yeah, that felt bad. And then, of course, the faction was kind of being propped up by like Spore Mines and Ripper Swarms and all this kind of scoring nonsense that like, it'll maybe win you a tournament if your opponent's not like clued into your tricks, but like that's not a fun player experience for you or your opponent. So what's new? The two really big changes are that the enemies that are within your synapse range of all your creatures are now at -1 for all battle shock tests. This notably includes the Shadow in the Warp, so that's more likely to go off if you've got like synapse creatures in and amongst your enemy. And as well as that, it stacks with the Neuro Tyrant and his ability, so even Space Marines need 8s or more, which, it's pretty tough on that leadership test. The Neuro Tyrant is also one of my favourite models like the Tyranids have, and you can see him here in this picture leading some zones, which I'll talk about later, but that's another great update for the army. Now, that's really great with all the some new Synapse creatures as well, but also friendly Tyranids, as long as they are in Synapse range, they get +1 strength in melee. This is absolutely great. It takes you over a load of breakpoints. A lot of the big monsters go up to like strength 11, so they're like wounding tanks a lot better. Still not doing great against the biggest things, but there are, there's ways around that, and it just generally helps you sort of like push through enemies. And loads of models got over a great breakpoint, like Gene Stealers. They're strength 5 now. They'll do a lot better against so many things, like the stuff that they were already shredding, like Guardsmen. It doesn't matter, but they were already shredding them. And I think it also makes stuff like Warriors really interesting with those twin-linked AP2 attacks. Those are really, really strong now, really like capable of just punching up into things. I've always sort of thought about this combo of the one use that you can get out of the poor Tyranid Prime here is to have him lead Warriors, purely to give them the Vanguard Invaders keyword so that they can advance and charge. That might be quite good on those melee Warriors, especially with sustained hits. It's a good way of getting that in Vanguard Invaders, or Vanguard Swarm, whatever that detachment's called. So that's quite cool. They're all really nice buffs, and I think they just go a long way towards making the Tyranids somewhat usable. So, as I said earlier, there were also some like fun little quality of life changes that I think are really impactful. The first one is the Broodlord has Synapse. This is great because it allows those Gene Stealer units, you don't need to use an enhancement to get it, or like have the little Neuro Tyrants guys follow your Gene Stealer units. Your Broodlord just always gets Synapse, and he always gives it to his Gene Stealers, which then means he's going to be putting that -1 on enemy battle shock tests, and he's going to be always giving them that +1 strength, which is just great for himself, getting him up to I think strength 7, and the Gene Stealers up to strength 5. Which is really nice. It makes them a tasty little unit. And it's one of those things where he always should have had it, so that's really cool. I know the Neurolictor gets it as well, but that's not a model that I've played with. But I think that's nice. Just again, it should always have had synapse. My favourite one though, the Neurotyrant, as you can see him here, blasting away into these bikes, with mild success due to that -1 to hit and wound stratagem they have. But the Neurotyrant, he leads zone throw-ups, really, really good. Giving them +1 to hit, they're a good like anti-tank choice already, and being able to hit on 2s, that's really, really sweet, especially I mean, even if using them as like sort of medium infantry with their kind of plasma cannon heads, they get the sustained hits against infantry, they're hitting on 2s, that's really nice. And with all the way that the new synapse rule screws with enemies in terms of the battle shock, getting the secondary ability on the Neurotyrant to get +1 to wound, that's actually quite crazy. Like strength 12 with +1 to wound on those lances, that's really good. And then it makes the plasma cannons really dangerous into enemy hordes, like Orc Boys. Even with a Pain Boy, they don't want to get hit by like a ton of strength 6 attacks that sustained hits, hit on 2s, wound on 2s, like multiple damage. You know, it's a really quite good unit now. It's actually, I think it's great at overwatching as well, just with the volume. Not only the 2d6 auto hitting flamer shots, but the all the little blast shots. They can be really, really, really good. And also something that I just like to, I've always sort of theorized about being quite good. The Tyrant has that aura of assault on everyone's guns, and while that did get a little bit worse in the new sort of mission pass, where you can no longer advance and perform actions, he now gets lethal hits on that aura, which kind of helps old One Eye with a bunch of Carnifexes with all shooty guns. We're already kind of okay, especially with that advance and shoot from the Tyrant. And the free stratagems he can now put on them. They're a lot less limited than they used to be. And now that the Tyrant's also giving them lethal hits, it kind of gets around that one downside they have of having the poor strength on those Venom cannons. So that's quite a cool combo. Obviously, it's not something you play at a lower points game. It's more of a big boy thing. But yeah, that'd be really interesting to see. Just that big blob of monsters charging forward, all with the increased strength, all with the lethal hits, advancing, and they even benefit slightly from the new movement rules around pivoting around buildings and things. So yeah, it's quite cool. And these small quality of life changes, just they kind of make the Litanids just funner to play. They're like, it's something to be excited about. So I'm excited, and I hope other Tyranid players are too. And a quick little last thing here, this is just a unit that I think is really fun and really flavourful for the Tyranids, that I really like running. Just thought I'd highlight it to people here who probably have these models in their collection or can get them relatively cheap. This is a Broodlord and 5 Gene Stealers. It's just a great little combo, 155 points. They're really fast. They have Scouts 8, Move 8. They can have Advance and Charge with the right detachment. Loads of rerolls on the unit. If you're in Invasion Fleet and you take the sustained hits and these guys go into infantry, you're probably more likely going to get more hits than you have attacks because they're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s all the time. And with the sheer volume, they get 20 attacks out the Gene Stealers, 5 out the Broodlord. They're always in Synapse now because the Broodlord is Synapse. So you're very likely just to sort of smash into the enemy with this, and there's loads of ways to get like +1 to wound, sustained hits, lethal hits. Really, really nice. And they easily, with just the sheer volume of attacks and the dev wounds and the rerolls, they easily kill 5 Space Marines even if they AOC. So they're good for trading that way. And then they'll even do a decent chunk of damage, which to high strength and toughness vehicles. Even if they have 2-up saves, the dev wounds just get around that. So it's really, really cool. It's just a fun little unit for Tyranids, and Tyranids struggle to deal with vehicles. And then at the same time, if you have things like the overrun stratagem and all the great movement these guys have, they're really good for tying stuff up and like locking your opponent in place. And like they have -1 to hit. You pick an enemy unit in combat with them. They're like surprisingly difficult to shift. And if you spike the 5-up invuns, you use the 5-up feel no pain on them, like that stratagem. They're a good unit, and like they'll again. This is there's a great picture here from a game I had with a friend at the cave, and yeah, yeah. Well, I'm singing praise to this unit. You can guess who won this fight, even with Tigerius there poking at the hive mind. But yeah, a great unit. Just wanted to highlight it. I mean, I would love to get my hands on 3 of this unit and just see how much havoc it can wreak, because it's cool, it's iconic. And yeah, it's a good time to play bugs, a good time to be excited. I'm looking forward to keeping the train rolling with them. So thanks for watching. If you stuck around this long, I hope you enjoyed. Like and subscribe and all that jazz, and see you next time.